So most of the videos that I've done on this channel, I've talked about insurance policies and how it works with your specific policy. So if you are the insured and something happens with your vehicle, I talk about kind of what happens with that. But what happens if you're going through someone else's insurance company and you are now the claimant?
You in the past, I'm in the future. You mad?
Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, my name is Keela Trishan and I make videos on lifestyle, womanhood, mental health. I do vlogs, day in the life in the insurance industry, day in the life of the toddler, all the things. So if that's something that interests you, definitely go on ahead and click that subscribe button below. Be sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss any uploads. And if you're returning, thank you so much for coming back and thank you for your support. Okay, so as I preface, today I wanted to kind of walk you guys through what it looks like to be a claimant on an insurance policy. So to kind of define what that is, if you were to have an accident and it was the other person's fault and you don't want to use your insurance, what does it look like if you go through that person's insurance and use their liability coverage for their damages? I'm going to kind of just talk about that and just give you guys some pointers and tips. This video is perfect for adjusters if you're trying to understand kind of how that works. And it's also good if you as a consumer just want to know how that works. If God forbid you're ever in that situation, if you're currently going through that situation, or if you've been in that situation before and just didn't quite understand how things worked. So if you are interested, definitely go on ahead and stay tuned. Okay, so as I always preface when I do these videos, I work in the state of California. So the information that I'm giving you is based off of my experience working with California claims. If you have specific questions in a different state, I would suggest reaching out to your insurance company and they can best answer those questions regarding your liability coverage. Now, in the state of California, the minimum limit for property damage is $5,000. So what that means is that if you were to hit someone and you are responsible for the accident and you only have $5,000, that is the max that your insurance company will pay towards repairs to a vehicle, towards repairs to a home, or whatever object that you hit. That $5,000 is going to cover anything property. For the purposes of this video, we're talking about vehicles. So if you are on the claimant end, so you're the claimant, you got hit by somebody and they only have $5,000 worth of property damage limits, that is all you're going to be able to recover. So that $5,000, that's also going to include rental. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in the video, but if you need to rent a vehicle, it's going to come out of that $5,000. Typically what will happen is if your vehicle is more than the $5,000, the insurance company will have you sign what's called a property damage release. And what that basically says is that you're willing to settle for that amount, whatever the limit is. If it's $5,000, $10,000, whatever, you're willing to settle for that amount and you won't try to come after the insurance company or their insured for any additional money for property damage. Now, I just want to be clear on this. That's only talking about the property. So if you were injured in the accident, there's separate limits for that. So you can still go after them for any injuries or stuff like that. But as far as the property, if that person only has $5,000 and your vehicle is worth more than that, you unfortunately will only be able to get $5,000 for the property damage. Now, this is where it's important to have proper coverage on your own policy. So I know as a consumer, I can understand if you didn't cause the accident, you don't want to be responsible for having your insurance company pay and then be responsible for the deductible and all that. But each driver is responsible to protect their vehicle, and then they're only responsible minimally for damage that they cause. So that's where things can get tricky. I've seen it a lot of times where people get into these accidents and let's say they still have a lien holder on their vehicle. So it's not only them, they actually owe like another entity money on this car and they only can get $5,000. So obviously it's very stressful. But because of those limits, it's just important to understand the type of coverage that you have on your own policy. So the hope is that whatever limits they have will cover any damages to your car. That happens a lot too. There are a lot of people that are, adequately insured. Like I've seen people with $25,000 in property limits. And so obviously if your car is only worth 15, they can go on ahead and pay out on your vehicle in full. They can give you coverage for rental and stuff like that, or if something was damaged in the car during the accident. But if you are only working with $5,000, it's not much room to play with. So it's important, if you are in the situation or if you drive a car, period, make sure that you have proper limits on your vehicle just in case anything happens. I suggest, depending on the age of the vehicle, having, well, if you're making payments on a car, you have to have comprehensive and collision coverage. That's something that's required by the finance company typically, because if anything happens, they don't want that situation where there's a limit issue. But if your car is older and maybe it's just not worth it for you to have like collision and comprehensive coverage, I always suggest having it's called UMPD, and what that is uninsured motorist property damage. So it does cover a lower limit, but basically you would get like up to, depending on the policy, up to $3,500 for your vehicle if it is a total loss. So not a whole lot of money, but you would at least get something for your car if something happened, as opposed to you only having liability coverage and not having any insurance on your physical vehicle. So one more thing before I move on to the next topic, as far as the limits, that limit is per incident. So if there are multiple vehicles involved, the insurance company can only pay that limit for all of the vehicles involved. So I personally got into a situation like this when I was younger. I got into a car accident when I was in college, and it was 4 cars. So it was the car that hit me, which pushed me into another vehicle and pushed that vehicle into someone else. So my car was totaled, and then the car in front of me was totaled, and her car was way newer than mine. Mine was only worth a couple of $1,000s anyway. But the gentleman that hit us, he only had $5,000. And so they had to split that coverage between me and her. Now they were actually able to take care of me fully because, again, my car was only worth a couple of $1,000s. But that lady, she was only able to get whatever the difference was because her car was worth way more. At the time, her car was way newer. So you just want to keep that in mind. And that's why it's important to have your own coverage on your vehicle, especially depending on the year, because the last thing you want to do is be in a situation where you get hit and you don't have any recourse against the insurance company. Okay, so the second thing that you want to keep in mind if you are going through another insurance company as a claimant for an accident that happened that was not your fault is that most times the insurance company is not going to pay anything until they completely do their investigation. So even though they verify coverage and they may have statements and word of mouth saying that it's someone else's fault, a lot of times they're going to have to do a complete investigation so they can determine, 1, if their insured actually is at fault for the accident, and then 2, if there is any type of what's called comparative negligence. So what that means is that, like, our insured may be responsible for 70% of the accident, but you may be responsible for 30% of the accident. And if that's the case, then you're only entitled to 70% of the total settlement. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind as well. Now, there are some situations where it's cut and dry. Typically, if someone, like, just for example, making a left turn, usually the person making a left has to yield to oncoming traffic. So if it's a situation like that, it's kind of like an automatic, our insured is at fault if they were making a left-hand turn and didn't properly yield. So in that case, you should typically be able to get coverage right away. Or if there's like a rear end accident where clearly the person that got hit didn't do anything, they were just sitting there and got hit, that's another thing that's usually a decision they can make right away. Don't quote me on that because every situation is different, but typically those are situations where the insurance company, the responsible insurance company, will pay right away. Now, in these situations, it can obviously be a hardship, especially if you're using your vehicle to get to work. If your vehicle is sitting at a shop and the insurance company can't pay to get it out because they don't know if our insured is completely at fault, that kind of thing. So again, it's important to have proper coverage on your policy, because what you can do while you're waiting for the responsible insurance company to take over responsibility and pay for everything, you can go through your own insurance and they will immediately take care of you. So a lot of people don't want to do it because of the fact that they have to pay their deductible, which, again, completely understandable. But at that point, you have to make a decision. Do you have time to wait until the insurance company completes their investigation? That investigation can take a month or 2, depending on what reports need to be generated, what actual type of investigation needs to be done, if there need to be witnesses interviewed, things like that. Those things can take time. So if you're in a situation where you need this taken care of right away, which most people are, it may be best for you to go through your own insurance company, have them just, foot the bill, because that's what you pay insurance for. And then once everything is done, your insurance company will go after the responsible insurance company and recoup that money. And the hope is to also recoup your deductible, and you will get that back later on the back end. Okay, so the next topic that I want to talk about, being a claimant going through another person's insurance, is loss of use. That's basically another word for rental when we're dealing with vehicles. So you've lost use of your vehicle and you need a temporary car to get around while your vehicle is either in the repair shop or while the insurance company is putting together your total loss settlement and you're ready to get paid out. So the thing about going through the other insurance company is there's not really an end date. So, whereas somebody that is going through their own insurance, they're bound by the 30 days and whatever the dollar amount is. When you go through someone else's insurance company, typically the insurance company is not going to pay more than 30 days, if I'm just going to keep it honest, because usually they're able to resolve everything within that 30 days. They're not going to, unless there's some type of delays, they're not going to pay more than that. But you're only entitled to like the type of vehicle that you have. So if you have an older vehicle, let's just say you have a 2005 Toyota Corolla. You're entitled to a vehicle of the same size. Obviously, rental car companies are not renting 2005, so you would be in a vehicle that is similar in size and similar in type to, like, whatever the current year is, and that would be what you're entitled to. So some people think that they can go in and, oh, I want to get a Mercedes or I want to get a minivan or whatever. No, what you're entitled to is what you had. So the idea of insurance is to make you whole. It's not to gain. And that term that's used in insurance is called indemnified. So what that means is that they bring you back to where you were, not better, not worse. So they can't give you a lesser type of vehicle. If you did have a Mercedes, you're entitled to a Mercedes or similar. But if you did not have a Mercedes, you're only entitled to what type of car you had. So that's also contingent on the limits of the policy. So if there is enough money to pay for a rental vehicle, outside of paying for your car, then you will get that. But that's something that your adjuster will discuss with you once the investigation is done and once they determine that they do owe you for damages. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about, just as far as being a claimant against an insurance company, is you want to be mindful of any fees that you're incurring. So just kind of based on everything I've talked about, the insurance company is not going to pay anything until they have actually accepted responsibility. There are limits. And so the last thing you want to do is get in a situation, especially if you don't have the proper coverage on your own policy, you don't want to get into a situation where you have accrued these fees at, let's say, a body shop or a tow yard. Your car's just been sitting there while you're waiting to see if there is coverage. You don't want to be in a situation where you're now responsible for these fees because the insurance company doesn't have enough limits to cover that for you. Even then, even if they do have enough limits, the insurance company is only going to cover what's reasonable. So typically what will happen is, like, if your car was towed from the scene and your car is at the tow yard or at some type of storage facility, you're going to want to move your vehicle to a storage-free facility, whether that be your home or whether that be a neighbor's house, or some people will take their vehicle to their employment place, whatever. Like if they're able to park their car there, you want to take your car somewhere where it's not accruing any fees until that investigation is over with. Once the insurance company does determine that their insured was at fault and that they're going to allot coverage for you, they will help you move the vehicle. So like they'll help you tow it somewhere, but you want to just kind of keep those fees to the bare minimum, just in case there's not enough limits and just in case they decide that they're not fully at fault and you are responsible for, some of the accidents. So these are all case by case basis. So me personally, I think that, if you're in an accident, depending on how it goes, you probably know if you are somewhat at fault. So if you have any of those doubts, you definitely want to just be mindful. Don't expect the insurance company to just foot the bill for everything, because even for their insureds, they don't foot the bill for everything. The idea, and I mention this in every insurance video, is to mitigate your damages. All that means is that you have to just be mindful of what's reasonable. So if you were paying for it and you knew that you were going to have to pay these storage fees, you wouldn't let your car sit at a facility accruing charges indefinitely because you may not have $5,000 or $6,000 to pay to get your vehicle out. Your vehicle may not even be worth $5,000 or $6,000 depending on how old it is. So you want to have that same mindset when dealing with the insurance company. Obviously, there are different circumstances, but whatever's going on, you want to let your adjuster know so they can kind of guide you. But as an adjuster, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, if you are a claimant, you want to make sure that your vehicle If it's at a tow yard, get it out of there. If it's at a storage facility, get it out of there while the investigation is going on. And then if your vehicle is able to be repaired, or if it ends up being a total loss, then you can kind of decide what to do after. But just don't accrue charges. This also goes for rental. You can rent a vehicle. I'm not saying not to, like, it's your prerogative, but if you're expecting the insurance company to pay, you might want to make sure that they have enough limits, make sure that they're actually covering everything before you just go out and go get a car. I've seen a lot of times where people will rent a vehicle that is more than what the insurance companies want to pay per day, and they're upset because the insurance company won't pay that additional money. If you have a vehicle that the insurance rate is $25 a day and you decide to go spend $50 a day for a car, the insurance company is going to reimburse you $25 if they have a limit. So just kind of keep that in mind. There are, again, a lot of different instances, and my best advice is just to stay in touch with your adjuster. Anything that you're not sure about, ask them, because when you assume, you know the rest. So just make sure that you're not accruing charges that the insurance company may not cover and that you're stuck with. You don't want anything affecting your credit or, you know, anybody coming after you for something that you could have prevented. All right, you guys, so that is all that I have for you today. I wanted to put this video out because, again, I do talk a lot about like the insurance policy and kind of what that looks like going through an auto policy and actually using the coverages that are available to you if you get into an accident. It does look different if you are a claimant. My best advice, as I keep saying, is just to make sure that you have the proper coverage on your policy, because here's the thing. You don't ever want to get into an accident. You don't ever want your car to be hit. You just don't want to go through that. But if in the event you do get hit, you can't choose what that driver has. That driver may not have coverage. That's a big thing. Even though it's required, you know, some people still out here riding around dirty. If you get hit by someone, they may not have, you know, the like adequate limits. They may only have $5,000 in property damage. And in that case, if you have a Maserati or whatever, you're going to be in a situation where your car's not going to be covered. You're going to get $5,000. And that's only if you're the only vehicle involved. If there's other vehicles involved, then you're now having to split that amount. So just kind of working in the insurance industry, I do feel like sometimes it's kind of risky being a claimant because there's no contract between you and the insurance company. So they're kind of just telling you what they're going to pay, what's reasonable. Like, all in all, the idea is to get you taken care of and protect their insured. So my advice is just to make sure that you are covered. So if you're in a situation where someone hits you and they're not adequately covered, or, you know, they consider you partially responsible, you're at least able to go through your insurance company where you pay premium and they're able to take care of you in full. So I hope that video helped. If you guys have any additional questions just on anything that I've talked about or even something different, be sure to leave me a comment below. I'm more than happy to answer that for you if I know the answer, and if not, I can kind of try to direct you where to get the answer. If you like this video, definitely go on ahead and give me a thumbs up. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. I do want to thank you guys for all the support. I've grown significantly in like the last couple of months. I'm still not at my 1,000, but you know, we are on the road to 1,000. So I do want to thank you guys if I don't say it enough. I appreciate you guys watching all the videos, all the support, all the comments, all of it. So yeah, if you made it this far and you have not subscribed, definitely go on ahead and click the subscribe button. I'd love to have you. Click on the notification bell so you don't miss any uploads. And with that being said, you guys have an amazing day, and I will see you next time.
You in the past, I'm in the future. You mad, they don't salute you. I need a bag, size is super. They turned your bag, it's like I never knew you.